y'all. So it is your girl's 54th birthday. I am so thankful and so grateful to be amongst the living. I am excited. I'm happy about life itself. And I just want to say thank you so much for all the birthday wishes. I am trying my best to tell everybody thank you. If I don't get around to it, then just don't charge it to my heart. Charge it to your girl brain, because you know, I don't mean to exclude anybody. I love you all. Thank you to everybody. My family, I really do appreciate you guys. You know, we had a really good time yesterday, part 1. We're about to start on part 2 today, and it's been fun. It's been real. I really appreciate everybody that's in my life. I do appreciate everybody. My entire family, my kids, my mom, my husband, my mom, my kids, my husband, my kids, my mom, however order you want to put it in, my sister, my nieces, nephews, cousins, aunts, uncles. Whew, did I leave anybody out? I don't think so. Thank y'all so much. Did I say sisters? Sisters. I appreciate everybody. Daughter-in-laws. Yeah, my sons, my daughter. I'm trying not to leave nobody out, y'all. Oh, my grandkid. Now, girl, you know I'm tripping. My grandkids. I love my grandkids. Those are my babies. And I appreciate everybody. But just want to say thank you to everybody.
On March 22nd, 2025, a brief 911 call from a quiet home on Cheney Drive set off a chain of questions investigators are still attempting to piece together. The call lasted only seconds, but it captured 2 critical details: a man denying that anyone had called for help, and a faint female voice in the background saying, "Why do you want to kill me? I need help." Those words became the final recorded evidence of what occurred inside the residence of 54-year-old Teresa Adams-Pugh and her husband of over 2 decades, 53-year-old Christopher Pugh. When deputies arrived minutes later, they attempted to make contact, but the house remained silent. As they approached, a loud sound believed to be a gunshot came from inside. Standard protocol required a search warrant before entering, forcing investigators to wait outside the residence for hours while the situation inside remained unknown. At approximately 11 p.m., they entered the home and discovered both Teresa and Christopher dead from gunshot wounds, leading authorities to classify the incident as a suspected murder-suicide.
Loved ones of the victims are still struggling to understand how something like this could have happened. They say the couple was married for over 20 years, and there was never any signs of domestic abuse. They even told me they didn't know a gun was in the home.
Total surprise.
Unexpected, like.
He adored her. Whatever Renee wanted, Chris would give it to her.
Marion Shaw is still coming to grips with the fact that she'll never see her oldest daughter, Teresa Adams-Pugh, again. The family called her Ree.
Fun-loving, the life of our family party.
Marion says her daughter had 4 children and 15 grandchildren. They say Teresa was proud that her granddaughter Denia was heading to North Carolina A&T this fall.
She just wanted us to be the best we could be, like you could tell. Like.
The Johnson County Sheriff's Office says around 6:45 Saturday afternoon, their dispatch center received a call from 10 Cheney Drive in Garner. Investigators say the caller said nothing before hanging up, which prompted 911 communications to call the number back. That's when the sheriff's office says a man answered the phone saying he did not call 911. The dispatch overheard a woman in the background saying, "Why do you want to kill me? I need help." When deputies arrived, they heard a gunshot inside the home. 911 communications called the number back, and the man told them he would come outside to speak with officers. But when he didn't, negotiators tried to convince him to come outside. They ultimately had to obtain a search warrant to enter the home. And that's when they found 53-year-old Chris Pugh and his wife, 54-year-old Teresa Adams-Pugh, a couple who loved ones say had been married for more than 20 years. The Johnson County Sheriff's Office is investigating this tragedy as a murder-suicide. And loved ones say they saw no signs of domestic abuse.
You would never, like, my papa he never yelled at us, or like, there's no way you would have suspected. Like, he never yelled at us, whooped us, none of that.
He wasn't violent at all.
You can't even say you seen him mad, because I could count on my hand how many times
like
he
they
was mad
fussed in front of us, like
none of that.
Neighbors who didn't want to be identified say during the standoff, officers were asking residents to either evacuate or not come home.
I pulled up my Ring doorbell, and an officer was approaching, just telling me, please do not come home. He wouldn't tell me what was going on, but just said, just don't come home, and I will let you know when it is safe to come home.
And like loved ones of the victims, this homeowner was also in shock after learning what happened to her neighbors.
They kept to themselves, but very friendly, supportive. With my son would have a lemonade stand, and they would come support.
And now this family is left with questions as they are forced to grieve the loss of 2 lives forever.
Chris was a good man. I'm not going to say, but he just did the wrong thing.
This case raises immediate questions. What happened inside the home between the moment the 911 call was placed and the moment deputies heard the gunshot? Why did the male voice deny the call? And what circumstances led to the woman's recorded plea for help? What factors existed in a long-term marriage with no public history of domestic disputes or law enforcement involvement? And how does a situation escalate so rapidly without outward indicators? You're watching Crimelens Uncovered, where the spotlight of social media casts the darkest shadows. From TikTok phenoms and Instagram couples to Facebook influencers, we peel back the filters to reveal the crimes behind the fame. When the chase for followers turns deadly, we follow the trail to uncover the truth. These aren't just viral clips. They're stories of obsession, betrayal, and lives cut short. Subscribe if you want the unfiltered truth behind the trending hashtags, because by the time a story explodes online, the tragedy has already happened. Now let's dive in. Teresa Adams-Pugh was a woman whose life was deeply rooted in family, community, and the values she carried from her upbringing in North Carolina. Born on June 29, 1970, in Moore County, Teresa grew up in a closely connected family environment shaped by her parents, Marion Shaw and William Thomas. Her early years reflected the characteristics that people would later remember her for: dependability, a lively personality, and a natural ability to bring people together. Those who knew her personally described her as someone who brought energy into a room and kept her family bonded through consistent communication, gatherings, and support. As an adult, Teresa built a life centered around her role as a mother and grandmother. She was the mother of 4 children and the grandmother of 14, a role she embraced fully and proudly. Family members recall her as the person who ensured celebrations happened, who checked on everyone regularly, and who remained deeply involved in the lives of her children and grandchildren. Being the life of the party was not about entertainment for her. It was about presence, connection, and making sure people felt included and supported. This reputation within her family created an identity that she carried into every part of her life.
Hey y'all, happy Mother's Day!
Happy Mother's Day!
We're at Mother's house and the guys have hibachi catered for us today. Let me show y'all. Let me turn the camera around.
Let's go!
Isn't that sweet? Isn't this nice? The guys are so sweet. Thank you guys. Yes.
We're gonna have to sit down.
We're all sitting here eating hibachi. Hi, ladies. The ladies in the family. Woo, it's hot out here. Got ladies over here. My auntie, cousin, niece, granddaughter, my mother, niece, daughter-in-law. Isn't it sweet? I did.
Outside of her role in the family, Teresa was known in her community as someone who carried herself with warmth and openness. Neighbors and lifelong acquaintances described her as fun-loving and approachable, a person whose personality left a lasting impression. She was not known to be confrontational or withdrawn. Instead, she communicated freely and interacted with those around her in a way that made people feel comfortable. Christopher Pugh, age 53, became the primary focus of investigators seeking to establish a clear understanding of the circumstances surrounding the events inside the Cheney Drive residence. To build an accurate profile, investigators began by examining his personal history independent of the incident itself. Public records indicated that Christopher had no documented criminal activity at any point in his life. This absence of legal history included no arrests, no domestic-related complaints, no restraining orders, and no previous police responses involving him. This provided investigators with a starting point that showed no formal indicators of previous violent or disruptive behavior. Interviews with individuals who had interacted with him provided additional insight into his day-to-day conduct. Statements described him as predictable in routine and consistent in demeanor. He was observed performing household tasks, running errands, and participating in standard community activities without drawing unusual attention.
July 29th, we're going to be at the Women's Empowerment at the RBC Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the first time we've had it in maybe 2 years because of COVID, so they're expecting a great turnout. Come out and we'll have a booth out there. We explain, what our class is about, and, we love for you to come through.
These accounts, combined with a lack of documented behavioral issues, created a profile that did not immediately suggest an escalating pattern of conflict or instability. Teresa Adams-Pugh and Christopher Pugh lived in a residential area of Johnston County, North Carolina, where they maintained a consistent, unobtrusive presence within their community. Their residence on Cheney Drive was part of a neighborhood characterized by established households and minimal turnover, which contributed to a stable environment where long-term residents were familiar with each other's routines. Within this setting, the couple's daily activities drew little attention, indicating a lifestyle centered around routine and privacy. Public records do not provide extensive personal histories for either Teresa or Christopher, but they do confirm that neither individual had prior legal issues that drew law enforcement involvement. Background checks show no criminal charges for Christopher and no documented incidents requiring police intervention at the couple's address. This absence of historical data made it difficult for investigators to identify patterns or warning signs when evaluating the context of the case. The marriage between Teresa and Christopher spanned more than 2 decades, placing them within a demographic where shared routines, financial responsibilities, and long-established habits are common.
Now, I'm gonna tell you, I do appreciate my husband. My husband is the sweetest guy in the world. He really is. He's a great guy. He's a wonderful guy.
I'm just slow.
I must admit. Yeah, he's just slow, but he's a wonderful guy.
Their long-term partnership suggests a shared history involving typical household management, decision-making, and mutual responsibilities. However, their private lifestyle limited the availability of detailed information about their internal relationship dynamics, personal disagreements, communication habits, or potential stress factors. Neighbors reported that the couple maintained predictable routines, often leaving and returning at regular times and performing standard residential tasks without drawing attention. There were no reports of visible conflicts, loud disturbances, or unusual activity at the residence. This level of routine made it difficult for observers to identify any behavioral shifts or changes in the relationship in the period leading up to the incident. Because the couple rarely engaged in extensive social interaction within the neighborhood, information about their personal lives beyond surface-level observations remains minimal. Information about each individual's professional background is also limited. Publicly accessible sources do not document Christopher's occupation, employment history, or work schedule. Teresa's career activities are similarly not extensively recorded in public databases, and there are no detailed accounts of her professional engagements or daily workload. This lack of employment information restricted investigators' ability to assess possible external pressures or stress-related triggers that might have influenced the couple's home life. Within their household, no witnesses reported any recent visitors, major disputes, or unusual events leading up to the 911 call. The absence of recorded disturbances contributed to the difficulty investigators faced when attempting to establish a progression of events or a shift in the couple's behavior. On March 22, 2025, the activity inside the home on Cheney Drive followed a routine pattern that began earlier in the day. Neither neighbor accounts nor environmental noise reports indicated irregular movement, disturbances, or visitors throughout the afternoon. The household entry points showed no signs of forced access, suggesting that both individuals were inside without interruptions from outside sources. Investigators later determined that the window blinds were drawn and the home remained closed off during the hours leading up to the incident, reducing visibility for anyone observing from outside. During the late afternoon, both individuals were believed to have remained inside the residence. No one in the neighborhood reported observing unusual behavior or signs of escalating tension through visual or audible indicators. This absence of outward signals created a timeline where the developments occurred entirely within the enclosed space of the home. Investigators relied on interior scene evidence and digital data sources, such as timestamps from household devices, to establish the sequence of events. At 6:44 p.m. on March 22, 2025, a 911 call was initiated from the residence on Cheney Drive. The call connected briefly and ended without a direct report from the caller. Following standard procedure, the dispatcher called the number back. When the call was returned, a male voice answered. He stated there was no emergency and denied that anyone at the residence had contacted 911. During this exchange, a faint female voice was recorded in the background. Audio review later confirmed the vocal statement. "Why do you want to kill me? I need help." The background voice indicated an active conflict occurring at the time of the call. The dispatcher attempted to clarify the situation, but the call ended shortly afterward. Due to the contrast between the male's verbal denial and the background audio indicating distress, the dispatcher classified the call as a potential domestic incident requiring immediate response. Deputies were dispatched to the residence based on the recorded evidence. When deputies arrived, they attempted verbal contact at the door. No response was received from inside. Officers repeated announcements and monitored for movement or sound. A perimeter check was conducted around the structure to determine whether anyone attempted to exit or whether any signs of activity were visible through windows or adjoining areas. While the deputies were still positioned at the residence, they heard a loud noise from inside the house, consistent with a single gunshot. Officers reported the sound to dispatch and adjusted their response strategy to address the possibility of an armed individual. Once judicial approval was granted, officers prepared for a high-risk entry. The entry team assembled with appropriate protective equipment and followed procedures designed for potential armed encounters. At approximately 11 p.m., deputies executed the search warrant and entered the residence in a structured formation. Their first task was to clear each room to ensure there were no active threats or surviving individuals who required medical attention. This systematic sweep determined that the situation was no longer active. During the interior search, deputies located the bodies of Teresa Adams-Pugh and Christopher Pugh, both deceased from gunshot wounds. After confirming the absence of any other individuals, officers transitioned the scene to an investigative operation. They secured the residence, preserved all evidence, and ensured that no items were disturbed before forensic personnel arrived. Crime scene investigators and medical examiners entered after the initial clearance. Their tasks included photographing the interior, documenting the positioning of both individuals, identifying and securing firearms, collecting shell casings, and performing gunshot residue testing where applicable. They also recorded environmental conditions, examined potential entry and exit points, and mapped the layout to assist in reconstructing the sequence of events. Once all immediate processing steps were completed, investigators established that no third party had been present and classified the incident as a suspected murder-suicide. The law enforcement response provided a full timeline of actions from the initial 911 call to the discovery of the scene, forming the foundation for the case's official findings. As officers proceeded down the central hallway, they reached a living space area where the primary findings of the incident became evident. Teresa Adams-Pugh was located on the floor, unresponsive, with an apparent gunshot wound. In the same room, but positioned separately, was Christopher Pugh, also unresponsive. A firearm was found near him. The spatial arrangement of both individuals, as well as the placement of the weapon, became the starting point for the forensic reconstruction of events. No additional individuals were present in the residence, reducing the scope of the investigation to solely the two occupants. Investigators documented the immediate surroundings, including the orientation of both bodies, the condition of the floor, the distance between the decedents, and the location of the firearm relative to each individual. There were no disruptions to nearby furniture, no overturned items, and no scattering of personal belongings, suggesting that the incident occurred within a limited time frame and confined area. This absence of disturbance was noted carefully, as it helped establish the sequence of actions leading to the final positions observed during discovery. After investigators completed the initial processing of the residence, they moved to gather external accounts from individuals connected to Teresa Adams-Pugh and Christopher Pugh to establish how the couple was perceived before the incident. Interviews began with neighbors who had long-term visibility into the household. Residents reported that the couple maintained a consistent presence in the neighborhood and rarely engaged in activities that drew attention. Neighbors stated that interactions with the pair were generally brief and routine, often limited to simple greetings or short conversations. None of the neighbors interviewed reported previous disturbances originating from a home or noted incidents suggesting conflict or tension. These accounts help investigators understand that the daily environment surrounding the residence gave no outward indications of instability. Family interviews provided additional context. Relatives stated that the couple's long marriage appeared steady, with no requests for assistance, advice, or intervention concerning interpersonal issues. No family member recalled recent disagreements, unusual behavior, or statements suggesting rising tension. The absence of concerning communication within the family supported the observation that there were no widely recognized warning signs visible to close relatives before the incident. Investigators also spoke with acquaintances and individuals who interacted with the couple in broader social or professional settings. These interviews reflected a similar pattern. Interactions were described as predictable and limited in detail, with no references to personal difficulties. Acquaintances reported no noticeable shift in behavior, attitude, or communication from either individual in the days or weeks prior. This contributed to the assessment that the couple did not display outward behavioral changes detectable to those outside the home. First responders present during the initial dispatch call also provided statements. Their accounts clarified that the residents had no documented history of previous emergency or welfare checks. This information helped frame the event as isolated from any earlier law enforcement involvement, further confirming that official records held no indicators of prior domestic issues. The broader community response, captured through recorded statements and voluntary interviews, focused on the unexpected nature of the situation. Residents noted that the couple's long-term presence and generally quiet lifestyle created no anticipation of the outcome later investigated. These reactions offered insight into how the event contrasted with the community's understanding of the household. Media interviews conducted by local outlets added additional external viewpoints. Individuals familiar with the couple described them as private, routine-oriented, and not involved in conflicts visible to the public. No interview introduced claims of past disputes, threats, or escalating issues. Instead, the collected statements consistently aligned with the observations gathered from neighbors, family, and acquaintances. The couple did not present external signs that would have prompted concern or intervention. When analyzed together, the interviews and reactions formed a unified narrative. They showed that those in proximity to the couple, whether socially, professionally, or geographically, did not observe changes, patterns, or events that typically indicate developing domestic risk. The collected statements provided investigators with a clearer understanding of how the couple was viewed externally and confirmed that there were no widely recognized indicators leading up to the incident. Although investigators established the overall structure of the incident, several important questions remain unresolved due to the limited evidence available. One significant gap concerns the private dynamics inside the home before the emergency call. There's no documented information describing the conversation, disagreement, or interaction that led to the conflict. Without first-hand statements, recorded communications, or identifiable digital activity indicating tension, investigators cannot determine the origin point of the confrontation or whether it developed over time or occurred suddenly. Another unanswered question involves the internal movements of both individuals between the start of the conflict and the discovery inside the residence. The available physical evidence confirms locations at the time of recovery, but does not reveal where each person moved during the progression of the incident. how long the confrontation lasted, or whether either individual attempted to exit the home or access additional points within the residence. The absence of internal surveillance or witnesses leaves these movements unknown. Investigators also lack clarity regarding possible external pressures. Interviews did not yield information about recent arguments, lifestyle instability, or documented stressors. However, the absence of external reports does not exclude the possibility of undisclosed issues. Authorities cannot determine whether financial strain, personal disputes, health concerns, or private disagreements may have contributed to the escalation. No available evidence identifies these factors, leaving their influence undetermined. Another unresolved area concerns the decision-making process inside the home. The evidence establishes the outcome of the incident, but does not reveal the reasoning or intent behind the actions taken. The lack of written statements, messages, recordings, or verbal accounts means investigators cannot assess whether the event was premeditated, impulsive, or triggered by an immediate dispute. Without indicators of planning or documented behavioral changes, the motive remains undefined. Additionally, investigators cannot determine whether any attempts were made to seek help or communicate outside the home prior to the emergency call. There is no record of texts, calls, or messages to family, friends, or authorities leading up to the event. Without such information, it is unclear whether earlier opportunities for intervention existed or whether the situation escalated without warning. Another unanswered question involves the time frame between the end of the emergency call and the final moments inside the residence. The available evidence confirms the general window of time, but does not provide a detailed minute-by-minute sequence. Without precise timestamps linking internal activity to external law enforcement observations, the order of actions inside the home remains undefined. Finally, the absence of additional audio or witness accounts prevents investigators from understanding the full context of the incident. With only limited verbal information captured during the emergency call and no surviving individuals inside the residence, authorities cannot definitively identify the underlying cause, the escalation pattern, or the internal motivations involved. These gaps form the remaining uncertainties that prevent a complete reconstruction of the incident. And that concludes today's case. But remember, this is just one of countless hidden stories waiting to be brought to light. Here at Crimelens Uncovered, we're committed to digging beneath the surface, giving a voice to those who can no longer speak, and making sure their stories are never lost to time. If today's investigation gave you new perspective, just wait. There are more cases coming that will shock, disturb, and challenge the way you see the world. So don't forget to subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on notifications, so you're always first to know when a new story drops. We release fresh investigations regularly, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Before you go, share your thoughts in the comments. Which part of this case resonated with you most? Your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember, the search for justice always begins with the truth. Crimelens Uncovered, where every case finds its voice.